Greetings everybody, my name is Tommy the Game Master and welcome to my channel. Well, I have decided to change the gamer culture videos to Gamer Corner for two reasons. Number one, I don't want people to mistake my videos for something like what Gaijin Goomba does. And number two, if you use the word culture in a YouTube title, the YouTube ad bot freaks out. Anyways, let's get to what this topic is actually about. Anyways, I was playing Cuphead, and while I enjoyed the game for the most part, I never finished it simply because it was frustrating, and I kinda got annoyed. But not as much as I was with the critics. Basically, all the critics praise it for its severe challenge, saying that it keeps you going for another try, or that it's like the good old days of games when games were hard and just kicked your butt. And if you take a look at the Cuphead discussion board, you see that kind of thinking on steroids. And while to Jim Sterling they sound like old-fashioned aristocrats, to me they sound like disgruntled old fart. This is just like it used to be, like a kid constantly dying and games made you earn everything rather than hand it to you, sonny. Okay, that's not true and I'll explain later. However, another controversy popped up that made people angry, even made me angry until I actually looked into it, and that was Assassin's Creed Origins is going to have a tourism mode. And when I first saw this, I thought bullcrap, but after looking into it, and from the sounds of it, you're not really completing the game, you're just allowed to explore the world, and it even gives you some stuff on the things that the historians have found out about the era. And that's one of the reasons I like playing Assassin's Creed, is exploring these different eras and times of history, whether it's the Renaissance or the age of piracy. So if you want my opinion on this, it's 2 thumbs up. I think it's a great idea. But why is challenge important to a lot of gamers? It comes from a variety of different things. Mainly, we like to think we accomplished something. We made it past another level. We beat a difficult boss, and we can now tell our gamer friends about it and even brag a little bit. However, I don't want to talk about whether or not challenge is a good thing, but rather when is too much or too little a good or bad thing. And why do we older gamers sometimes fall into the trap that having too much challenge is a good thing? Let's start off with the first. If you've been on the Cuphead discussion board on Steam, you hear a whole bunch of people who will say, "Back in my days, games were hard. They didn't hand us victories, and when we died, we got sent back to the beginning of the games. Game nowadays have saves, checkpoints, and developers want you to win. Every game is accessible. Back in the game, these games weren't acceptable, and we liked it." Okay, let's discuss how much this is BS, and also why I didn't think Cuphead was that good. Again, it's not a terrible game. To me, it's worth purchasing at a half-price sale, but it's definitely not a 10 out of 10. It's more like a 7 out of 10 for me. Okay, let's take a look at some of these hard NES games and fight back at the accessibility and challenge claim. The main thing to remember is that back in the day, games sent you back to the beginning, often for failing, and there's a reason for that too. Back in the day, adjusted for inflation, games were more expensive than they are now, even with a season pass thrown in. And if you're good, they would last about an hour at most to play through from beginning to end. So game designers had to put that in. Also, since they were shorter, the challenge curve also got a lot higher, a lot faster. But the challenge curves were in those games. Even the really hard games, most of them had an easy first stage. Battletoads and Ninja Gaiden started off real easy and breezy, and didn't get stupidly hard until the 3rd level. And oftentimes, if a game didn't start off easily, it could easily be assumed it was broken, like Bayou Billy. Very few games that had huge difficulties right from the start are considered to have aged well, even amongst older gamers. And I would argue, since Bayou Billy's original version called Mad City was actually an easy beginner's level action game, and for anyone who jumps up and screams Contra, All I have to say is up, up, down, down, left, right, BA, select, start. Konami and Nintendo basically did everything they could in the 80s before the internet was around to make sure that every kid in the schoolyard knew that code by heart. It makes the game accessible to beginners. I would also like to note that most of the good hard games from back in the day oftentimes rewarded you for beating a hard boss fight by letting you take it easy for a minute or two before the momentum started up again and it got stupidly hard again. Well, regardless of that, every game is meant to be accessible. Back in my day, no games was ever made or advertised to be accessible, and that was considered good. Bullcrap? I know a game that was specifically designed around being easy and accessible for everyone, and even marketed as such. And because of that, it grew so popular that Disney took major inspiration from it for their Pirates of the Caribbean movie series. And that little known property was the Monkey Island series. The games are really easy to get into, clever and funny in their writing, and while the puzzles are hard, you never really get penalized for screwing up. The game is a cakewalk, but it's quite fun. It's a shame now that Disney owns the rights to the series too, because they probably will never release another game simply because they don't want it competing with their hugely successful Pirates of the Caribbean ripoff. So why do people who are older gamers get their panties in a bind over the challenge? Why do we praise games that have high challenges, even if realistically speaking they are oftentimes putting frustration over fun? I think I know the answer. This started, for the most part, about 10 to 15 years ago, when the likes of the Lego games or even Nintendo stunts and the Super Mario Brothers games, to make sure they were easy enough for everyone, started to happen. And in these games, you were guaranteed a win almost by the way they work. I'll give Lego some credit. They have a lot of decent puzzles in the games I played, and some charm too. But yeah, Nintendo, to me, a good Mario game lets me take different routes and have different options through your game. A good Mario game only has stages that tell me to get good as optional stages for 100%. If I get frustrated with the stage, usually there's a way around it. We don't need the golden leaves or auto playthrough levels that I have seen in the Mario games in the last decade, but the games I have talked about so far are really decent. What pisses me off is when you have the concept of the player must win, because if they don't, they realize how flawed your game is. And when you do that, when you're making it easy to hide the flaws, then you're pandering. Two games that I'm going to be posting reviews of in the next few months, Star Wars The Clone Wars Republic Heroes and Rhapsody, a musical adventure, have this problem. In Star Wars Clone Wars, there are so many things broken in that game. If they didn't go with a no real penalty for death, there is a penalty, I guess I should say, and I will get into that in my review, but it's a stupid one that doesn't matter. If they had a real penalty, this game would be almost unplayable, or at least it would be one of the more frustrating Star Wars games made in a long time. The other one, Rhapsody, did it because it's a girls game. And if that sounds offensive to you, it should be, because it's pandering to its perceived audience, and in the end it makes the game's problems stand out even more, making it one of the worst JRPGs I've ever slogged through, and that's saying something. That said, most of the games these days aren't like that. Most of the ones that are good aren't like that at all. Sure, a lot of them don't necessarily have real penalties for dying, but that doesn't mean they have no way of challenging the player. On the contrary, there are so many more ways of making a challenging game now. With bigger world means more areas to explore. Games nowadays challenge players to find them all. Another thing most games do is have difficulty selection screens. If you want to replay the game on a higher difficulty, it's right there at the beginning. On top of that, games nowadays also have achievements, challenging players either to get everything and fight every boss, get the best time, or the higher scores to collect all of them. Some of them can be damn frustrating too, even on games I considered easy to get through the main story. So game developers do have ways of making their games more flexible and the challenge just to get through the game, story, and beat the boss. That's easy or hard if you want it to be. So in the end, games nowadays do have challenges, loads of it, but game design in itself has changed. Seriously, anyone here really going to defend Ninja Gaiden's last stage, or the bullcrap that's in Battletoads multiplayer, and really say that's a great game design, or that we want to see that type of stuff in modern games? I really don't think so. With more flexible design, more people are able to enjoy a game. It doesn't become less enjoyable just because more people can play it. Yes, there are games that unfortunately pander to their audience, but they get called out for it by people like me. Saying something has to be frustrating in order to be good is nonsense, and I think even dangerous to the industry. Anyways, let me know your thoughts about this in the comment section below. This is Tommy the Game Master signing out.